just generally with physicality, and we warmed up to the physicality component of play. You can't do it. You do it, you spot people 13, 16 points. You're running on the beach at that juncture, and that's what the game felt like for us. Obviously, in the second half, we were able to gain some traction in that regard and win the line of scrimmage more consistently on both sides. That could be reflected in the establishment of the run game and some quick 3-and-out like possessions on defense. But our inability to finish those drives in the form of touchdowns kept the margin where it was, and as the game wore on, it ended up being the result that it was. And so, that's kind of an assessment of it, if you will. The physicality component of it is something that has our attention, particularly as we prepare to get ready for the Baltimore Ravens game. Those of us that have been in this game, we understand what that's about. But largely, obviously, there's a lot of things that we got to do better in all three phases, so that the results of games don't look like that. But the physicality component is something worth mentioning, because we cannot compromise that. We're still very much a group in development in terms of division of labor, and rhythm and things that we do extremely well. And so we're still working and developing in those areas. Probably took a step back in some of those areas.
And there you heard Coach Mike Tomlin from a few days earlier. Lack of physicality seems to be the theme recently from a devastating loss, which Steelers were looking to pick up 3 in a row since their opening day loss at home versus the 49ers. Very mind-boggling what happened, and bittersweet to say the least. But here we go again. What does Mike Tomlin usually do? Gets his team ready for like a more physical style play. How you do that? You get practices going with pad practices. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition here of Show Blitz, presented by the Man of Steel Podcast. We're getting ready to preview the Week 5 matchup between the Steelers and Baltimore Ravens. This will be at home at Acrisure Stadium tomorrow afternoon as we look at it. This game will be played at noon kickoff tomorrow. As we look at this game will be on CBS. Definitely some stuff right there to be looking into. Definitely very disappointing right now. You can imagine right now, Matt Canada right now seems to be lucky to still be stick around as a head coach. I mean, the offensive coordinator, excuse me, of the Steelers right now under Mike Tomlin's watch, and we'll see if pressure continues to mount. How much more patient will the fans stay with him? All of that will be determined right there. And a lot of questions going in right now. I was like listening to around the Pittsburgh media circuit, especially 93.7 The Fan. Some are even probably on the Cook and Joe show. Will Mike Tomlin see enough and make any changes during the game? I don't know about that, but I mean, it seems like he's going to not fire the guy. And he didn't make any, uh, you know, other points of emphasis to change anything on the coaching personnel staff as of yet. But we shall wait and see. Tomorrow, Ian Eagle and Charles Davis, they'll be having the call for tomorrow's game on CBS. Evan Washburn, he'll be the sideline reporter for tomorrow's game. And we'll be having Carl Sheffers right there. He'll be the referee for tomorrow's contest right here. Steelers, they enter with a chance to possibly get back in the top of the AFC North as they trail the Baltimore Ravens right now by a game out. Baltimore Ravens, they are 3-1 this year. Both unbeaten in the division, with the Ravens gaining 2 victories so far over the Bengals and the Browns right there. And both each have 1 loss in the conference. Ravens have 1 more victory than the Steelers at 3 right there. And I mean, that's the whole crazy thing about this. Still early in the season, but right now, the Steelers, if they could play their cards right, they could be the only unbeaten team in the division and get back on top of the AFC North, which is very interesting right here. But I mean, let's just go back and just digest Mike Tomlin's comments right there, saying he was very disappointed that the Texans were more physical and played harder, and he knows they had to change that immediately. But I mean, at the same time, too, how many more times are you going to keep having blowout losses under your watch, especially under Matt Canada right here, too, which a lot of people are still scratching their heads, wondering how are you still going to bat for this guy? I mean, right here. And I mean, under Mike Tomlin's watch, I mean, to his credit, I mean, he's been able to, right the ship under big losses. And he has had at least 18 ugly losses under his watch as far as by 3 possessions or more. With the worst one coming a year ago in Buffalo, and that was a 35-point beatdown right there. Then second will come at Cincinnati 2 years ago, Thanksgiving weekend, I believe that was. They will lose that game by 31 points, 41 to 10 points to the eventual AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow and company. And then you also got to factor in too. 7 years ago, you thought last year's loss in Philly was bad. How about this one? How about in 2016? I was at that game. I was visiting my cousins. It actually happened to be my second Pittsburgh Steeler game as a fan. I went to my very first Steeler game the week before the home opener, as it was known then as Heinz Field, where they defeated the Bengals. Uh, Seeing both with cousins this time in Philadelphia a week later, and I was in the stands, live and in person for that beatdown. They lost by 31 points. Then you look at the Eagles last year, where they lost by 22 points. Uh, and then, so like I said, the top five losses right there, they're Tom's watches. The Bills, Bengals, Eagles, Patriots, and Ravens. Interestingly enough, a lot of these ugly losses too that happened under his watch came on the road. They've only had, from what I could tell, like at least two under Tomlin's watch where it was ugly losses, basically. Now, here's some good news right there. Despite how frustrating and, I mean, just elementary this offense is, I mean, right now, the good thing under Mike Tomlin's regime, they are 14-3 following these beatdowns here. I mean, you look at case in point right there too. I think the fairly decent one you will look at where they were able to bounce back nicely. And I would dare say that was against the Philadelphia Eagles right there. You look at that game where they lost by 22 points, as I mentioned, excuse me there, by 22 points. They would come back, they would go into their bye weekend, and then you would see the return of TJ Watt right there. And they would defeat the New Orleans Saints by 10 points. 20-10 was the final score in that one. But of course, as we all know, too, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were significantly wounded, and their pass rush definitely took a hit that year. And defensively, without TJ Watt, who suffered an injury in the beginning of the season, a pec injury, I believe it was. And it was a ugly time period during that span. I mean, you saw how inept they were. I mean, they were 2-6 without him prior to that win. Got them up to 3 games, and they would lose again a week later at home to the Cincinnati Bengals. They have finished out the season on a nice 7-1, or no, 6-1 run. Actually, 7-2 since Philadelphia Eagles lost. So 7-2 the rest of the way. Somehow miraculously, or should I say immaculately, go to 9-8. And that's the frustrating thing. I mean, Matt Canada's watch, unfortunately, he's had zero production of an offense where it's yet to crack 400 yards. The only time it's actually cracked 400 yards or more, he was actually the quarterbacks coach in 2020. And those games right there where he had the 400 yards, and of course that was all under Ben Roethlisberger, was their home opener where they beat Denver by 5 points, and then one of their embarrassing playoff losses in this 7-year losing streak. They're trying to snap if they happen to get back into the playoffs, can you get another playoff win? Well, they would lose this one 37-48, but they did score 553. Excuse me. They did total up 553 yards in total by the end of the day, in which you would see Ben Roethlisberger right there somehow. In that playoff game, despite all the turnovers right there, he put on them once again with the 4 interceptions, 501 yards in that game. 501 yards, 0 sacks allowed. And we're just everybody's just looking at it right now. Right now, Najee Harris, he was one of the first people to go to bat for his coaches, basically saying definitely not happy with media blaming coaches, according to Naj. It has nothing to do with coaches. It has everything to do with coaches. It's the players. We have to play better. We just can't keep looking at the coaches or whatever you guys keep putting out there. It's just stupid. Well, you all are doing players play, coaches coach. And I believe that. I mean, yeah, that is true. But a lot of times too, the positioning that they're going in, and you look at it too. Matt Canada, who is definitely clearly frustrated. Now, again, they have never fired a coach who was under contract mid-season. They have nobody can remember when, but there was some evidence Mike Tomlin just won't sit idly by and do nothing. In fact, he did fire one of his coaches after the start of the preseason, according to Jerry Dulac. 2012, he let go of special teams coordinator Al Everest, but that was for reasons that had nothing to do with football or coaching. Fast forward a year later, he was disappointed with the play of his offensive line. Tomlin reduced the role of offensive line coach Jack Bicknell during the season. He gave many of the duties to offensive assistant Sean Surratt, who would eventually become their offensive line coach years later. Mike Tomlin, he does hire and fire his own coach staff, but that doesn't mean the Rooney's don't get involved. You look at a perfect example right here. Back in 2011, Mike Tomlin expressed desire to extend Bruce Arians. He even told him so. His interest of wanting to bring him back at the season's end conference. But however, the late Dan Rooney at the time, along with Art Spire, they did not want to rehire Arians. So they put out a statement that Arians had decided to retire, but coincidentally, he did get hired a week later by the Indianapolis Colts. You would see Todd Haley right there. He would have a 6-year run right there. And like it or not, saying all the criticisms you will, I think more in particular, they struggled in the red zone at times under Haley, but he was definitely a huge reason for extending Ben Roethlisberger's career, yet alone saving it. Think about that. He was already eating up a lot of sacks as he was as a quarterback right there. He had to start reducing the amount of hits and sacks, try and keep him in the pocket, evolve into a better pocket passer, which he did. To Haley's credit, that's what Ben did become. And he definitely probably had like his better numbers under Haley. When you look at Ben Roethlisberger right there, throughout his career, when Haley came into the picture, he only had 4,000 yards passing, and that was when they were defending Super Bowl champions in 2009. But under Haley, he did get at least 4,000 yards of passing right there. His best touchdown interception ratio under Haley's watch during that time was 32 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. That was back in 2014 when they reclaimed the AFC North, which took about 4 years to do. They would eventually go on to lose to the Baltimore Ravens in the wild card round that year, frustratingly. And you would see in that game, I think for a few moments, Ben Roethlisberger had to be forced out of the game by the Baltimore Ravens. But at the same time, too, I mean, look at it this way. I mean, Matt Canada, he was definitely a guy who's definitely been very frustrated right here. I mean, definitely with some of the reports that were coming out about what was being covered in last week's CBS broadcast right there. And so see, but yeah. But anyway, let's see what happens tomorrow afternoon when we look at this game. I think it's definitely gonna be right here. I mean, you got Steelers Ravens coming up right here too. I mean, versus Baltimore Ravens definitely been a nip and tuck rivalry of all time right here. Hard hitting, very competitive, high intensity, no doubt about it. I mean, you look at the Ravens right there too. I mean, the Ravens who, for example, right now, I mean, the Steelers and Ravens, Steelers lead the all-time rivalry during the regular season by 6 games, 29 23. But when we add in the postseason too, and where the Steelers beat them 3 times, lost only 1 time, all-time regular season and including the playoffs, 32 and 24. And you look at the home record versus Baltimore Ravens, they are 8 games above 500. And yet, when on the flip side, when they're on the road, which they're not, thankfully, in this situation, they're dead even at 500 at 13 wins and 13 losses. So I ask you right here, I mean, right now, I mean, Steelers Ravens. I mean, Lamar Jackson's looking like he's trying to come back up to MVP form. He has definitely been sacked quite a bit, say the least. But right now, too, I mean, he's has a decent completion percentage, which is tops in the league right here. And oh, and by the way, here we go. The Matt Cannon. Sorry about that. Matt Cannon was saying that his words were misconstrued by the CBS broadcast in the Texas games. And he was quoted saying, "Of all the things we want to talk about and say, at no point do I doubt our players, doubt where we are, doubt we could come back. No doubts." It was mentioned by one of the CBS broadcasters who was calling the game. He was saying that Matt Canada told him the day before at their hotel they're not quite built to come back from big leads. It was by commentator Sparrow said during the broadcast when the Steelers trailed 13-zip in the second quarter. And so the way they start games is so critical with a young quarterback. Now, Canada was definitely not pleased with it being taken out of context. He would go on to say the conversation was why we ran more runs and play action against the Raiders versus the opening game, Canada told reporters. And why was that? As you look at a stat sheet, did it look that way? You're not going to stick to your running plan and the plan of running play action where you're down 3 scores. All we care about here is winning. So the conversation was at that point, the plan wasn't built to do that. Obviously, I believe we're going to win until the end. I kept throwing it to the point of our linemen had to do what? 46 dropbacks. Kenny Pickett had to do that. At no point was that conversation met in that regard. He would go on to say, I certainly believe he knew that. And obviously, it was taken wrong. If not, but of all the things we want to talk about and say, at no point do I doubt our players, doubt where we are, doubt we could come back. No doubts. I was literally saying any football person would tell you you're down 3 scores with that's that 18 minutes ago. You gotta start going faster. Gotta start being in a 2-minute mode. You have to score more points. That's how that came out, and certainly everybody on the offense is well aware of that. Well, I mean, the only thing that's very frustrating too, I mean, the biggest thing I think that sticks in everybody's craw when you look at that game last week too. I mean, during that ugly loss versus Texans right there. I mean, a critical portion of the game. Steelers were at this point down 16 6 and had a chance either take a field goal or go for a nice short yardage situation where they could have ran the ball. It was 4 from 1, Houston Texans 33. Or even Ben Roethlisberger was saying too, you could like faked like if you're gonna do like aggressive run, but then turn into a play action, then boom, execute, hit someone down the middle. Uh, but instead, what happens? They line up in shotgun. Pickett got sacked for 9 yards, wiped away field goal position, turnover on downs. What ends up happening the rest of the way? The Texans would go on to score an additional 2 touchdowns the rest of the way there. And it was just ugly the rest of the way right there. And at the end of the day, I mean, the defense was just pretty much winded. I mean, Houston Texans in that game, they controlled the time of possession, 32 to 35, by about 5 minutes over more than the Steelers right there. Control the turnover battle. There was only one in that game. And the disappointing thing that really bothered me in that game, too, you want to talk about the offense. I mean, defense, they could not get any sacks. Pass rush was definitely neutralized. And I definitely felt from watching that game, they were outwilled by the Texans. Those are will. When you had so many injuries at their offensive line with their tackles, I mean, you have many reasons to think that this should be in their favor. But again, what's one of the biggest criticisms that comes with a Mike Tomlin coach team, especially with the Steelers? He plays down. He plays low to losing opponents. They're inferior to his teams, and that's the bottom line at the end of the day. Uh, I mean, if you ride with this guy, he finds a way to end up keeping this team in position to be in contending for the playoffs, yet alone make the playoffs. It's just very disheartening to continue to watch this. And I just get very concerned at some point. I keep saying this many times. At some point, when is this going to fall back on Mike Tomlin, his responsibility, making these offensive play coaches right there? I mean, you had to start from like when you had Bruce Arians. So to Bruce Arians, to Todd Haley, to Randy Fichtner, Matt Canada. So that's 4 offensive coordinators in his 17th season as a Steelers head coach. I mean, it's just embarrassing what they've been able to do as a whole. And look at it right now, they definitely got a lot of work to do, and we'll see if it can translate anything. I mean, the good news is they still got time to like try and see if they could like pick up a victory, find a way, and then take their bye week, and which they'll be having a rest period, and they'll come out of their bye going to visit on the road in Los Angeles, the LA Rams right there at SoFi Stadium. So I mean, you got a lot of stuff right there where you could kind of like quote the scenes. I mean, at the same time too, I mean, like just make something happen here. I mean, it's just ridiculous what they've been able to do. But here we are. I mean, this is where the sticking point comes in at. I mean, where do you get in? It doesn't help the fact too that they're not executing the red zone enough as well. I mean, you barely even sniff the red zone. So far, I mean, they have been 7 for 11 in the red zone right there for 64%, which is not good enough, as we know. And that's part is just very disappointing right here. I mean, and then the biggest thing I think where a lot of people are questioning right now is Kenny Pickett the guy, or is he just a good quarterback? Because a lot of people who in Pittsburgh, like a guy like Arthur Motes, who's like watching this closely, he doesn't feel that Mitch Trubisky got a very fair chance to try and prove that. But I mean, at the same time, too, I mean, because since they went ahead and drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round, uh, Mitch Trubisky pretty much folded and did not play with much confidence, knowing that eventually this would be Kenny Pickett's job, that he was going to be taking it from Mitch Trubisky. I mean, the scoring percentage right now, the Steelers, when we look at it, I mean, they've had 48 drives this year, and they've only had a for scores right now 22.9%, so 23%, which is awful for 4 games. And there you have it. I mean, that's just fact of the matter where we're at, the life they're going to have to live with, and what they're going to have to be able to figure out. But again, I mean, how bad is the Steelers' offense? It was only the second time, according to Jerry Dulac, in the past 69 games, they didn't score a touchdown. It was the third time in 4 games this season they failed to generate more than 255 yards. And it's just head scratching how Matt Canada would say his words were taken out of context. The proof's in the pudding, my friend. So let's go ahead and check out the injury updates for today's for Sunday's game, excuse me. And some excellent news back on Wednesday, I believe, was reported. Uh, NFL Network insider Ian Rapport, Kenny Pickett bruised knee injury. It was listed as having a shot to play, but he's cleared to go for tomorrow. A lot of people were anticipating to be a real serious injury. He could have missed up to a month potentially. Boy, survived a serious scare. Many people were questioning if they should bench him, give him a break period, just to kind of ease off him. Because either way, too, I mean, he breaks down easily when the pass rush getting in his face. A lot of it has to do with the offensive line blocking. It is not up to par. This offensive line clearly is worse than last year so far, I feel like. I mean, just the way it's just getting manhandled at the point of attack. But as for the remaining Steelers, Pat Firemove, he's expected to be missing 2 or 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, according to team sources. But the remaining Steelers players that will not be in Sunday's game will be left tackle Dan Moore Jr., knee injury, right guard James Daniels, groin, Presley Harvin III, right hamstring, and you got right outside linebacker Alex Highsmith. He is questionable with a groin injury. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers had practice squad call-ups to the active roster, offensive lineman Ryan McCullum and former punter Brad Wing. As for the Ravens, excuse me, they got safety Daryl Worley, shoulder, who was placed on IR. Running back Kendrick Drake, wide receiver Laquan Treadwell, both elevated from their practice squad. Uh, Odell Beckham Jr., which would be a key guy to keep an eye on for tomorrow's matchup. He said he expects to play Sunday against the Steelers. He has missed the past 2 games with an ankle injury. And also, too, on Thursday, a Steelers defensive captain says he will be back this season addressing the week-one groin injury that landed him on IR as he met with the media for the first time on Thursday. So let's go ahead and get into keys to the game, how the Steelers could find a way to pull this out, get a nice win going into their bye week. And let's go ahead and take a look at it. So key number one for me, which would be a huge factor, third down conversions. Steelers are currently 24th in the league, converting 21 of 58 attempts for 36%. That is a huge problem and a huge reason where they lost that game to, I mean, the Houston Texans just not getting off early in the drive right there to start that game. I mean, you need to find a way to just get in there and control to help set the tempo. I mean, in that game last week for Texas, that abysmal loss, I mean, which was just, I mean, sickening. I mean, in that first half alone, they could not even get past the halfway mark of the field one time. Not once. They were in their own territory pretty much throughout the whole first half. I mean, they start off like the second half a little bit aggressively right there. I mean, Harris had a few nice running plays, but I mean, it was just sickening right there. I mean, for that game, just could not get anything going rhythmically. I mean, you haven't had a lot of like running opportunities on these third down opportunities. If you're going to be able to find a way to stop the Ravens tomorrow, it has to start there, converting the third downs. Key number two, lock down the Ravens wide receivers. Lamar Jackson's running mates may be still elusive on the ground, but he's second in the league, completing 78 of 105 passes for 74%. The task will be keying in on wide receiver Zay Flowers and tight end Mark Andrews, who have combined for 404 yards with 3 touchdowns. Zay Flowers has caught their longest pass of 52 yards, and don't forget about Odell Beckham Jr., who is questionable with an ankle injury, as we just mentioned a few moments ago. Key number three for this game, the pass rush. Steelers have dropped down to eighth in sacks with 13, while the Ravens have 15, which is fifth in the league. You got strong safety Kyle Hamilton, who leads his team with 3 sacks, and weak side linebacker Patrick Queen is tied for second with 2, and along with 3 other teammates of his, have combined for 12 quarterback hits. The Steelers are going to do anything significant in this game right here. They're going to have to get their pass rush going a little bit more too. I'm sure they got a lot more pride to play for. They may not hear the boos from the fans on defense. Unfortunately, the offense will be, which will be a long day for Canada. I mean, I'm looking for guys right here too on this Steelers depth chart right now to like help out TJ Watt, who still leads the way with 6 sacks for his team. I mean, other guys too. I mean, to look out for. I mean, Alex Highsmith, who, like I said, is questionable. I wonder about like will we see a guy like Nick Herbig coming in there? I mean, will he be able to come in at some point and help out with this team? I mean, you got a lot of things to really ponder about. I mean, you got right here too. I mean, for the Steelers too, you got Marcus Golden, who's the backup to TJ Watt for this game. I mean, Nick Herbig, he is the current backup to Alex Highsmith, but the rest of them right here too, you probably have to look at Larry Ogunjobi, who's been battling with a foot injury throughout the year. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see how they get creative right there. Can they get some exotic schemes right there to sold out Lamar Jackson Ravens? They've done a good job defending before. I think that'll be very key, but protecting Kenny Pickett at all costs will be very key. And how you're going to neutralize that pass rush, I think you're going to have to do it with some play actions or a lot more heavy dose of runs. So they're going to need that. And then my last key will be fast starts. Chances of the Steelers starting fast against the Ravens and getting the crowd on their side is not very favorable. Of their 24 first half possessions, according to Jerry Dulac, this season, 18 have ended without any points. And this is 18 of 24 without any points on first half possessions. 4 of those were because of turnovers, and of those 18 possessions, 11 were 3-0. That has to change in a hurry. Now let's go ahead and finish real quick. Aside from the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's go around the NFL. My segment, late hits right now. The NFL just announced power rankings right there, and you got the 49ers, who are number one pretty much in every category, which will be an interesting game tomorrow night, Sunday Night Football, and where the San Francisco 49ers will be hosting the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow, which will be an awesome game to watch right there. That will be on tomorrow at 8:20 p.m. Eastern. That's gonna be a good game to watch right there. Of course, the Niners have had the Cowboys number frustrating them in the playoffs with 2 in a row. Last victory for the Cowboys over the 49ers was back in November 2020. But I mean, right there too, like how the game ended with Dak Prescott in that playoff run. That when they hosted the 49ers in the wild card round. Prescott in that game completed 23 of 43 passing tests for 254 yards with a touchdown and an interception, and also rushed for 27 yards. But a lot of people remember how the game ended. On the last play with 14 seconds left, Prescott ran a quarterback draw up the middle for 17 yards and was unable to spike the ball to stop the clock from running down. 49ers will go on to go to the second round in that contest and eventually lose in the next round in the divisional. Or no, excuse me. No, I take that back. They would actually go on to advance the NFC Championship game and come up short to the LA Rams. And that right there, I think is going to say a lot right now. You got like Mike McCarthy, who's taking over the play calls for the Cowboys right there. I mean, and you saw like their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, right now. He is now with the Chargers. And I mean, Mike McCarthy's definitely been very aggressive getting going right here. But I mean, Dak Prescott right now, that fully guaranteed contract got back in 2021. Right now, still very looming right there about the Cowboys' future. You got Trey Lance, who was Cowboys acquired from the 49ers, who was on their depth chart. I believe he's still third string. A lot of things are rolling. I think this defense is for real right now when we look at it. I mean, the Cowboys. The only part I think is just a little bit question mark about their defense. They've been doing up against weaker teams so far. I mean, basically, I mean, you look at like Dallas Cowboys. They're second in the league with points off turnovers right there. With cash in on uh, 51 points off of 16 total turnovers, which including down and outs. Defensively, however, they're number one in that category, scoring 28 points off of 10 turnovers right there. You have a fumble return and two pick sixes, including a blocked field goal return for a touchdown, which was 6 points only for that one. But I mean, you look at like who the Cowboys have beaten. They shut out the Giants in their opener on the road. They beat the Jets. So back-to-back New York teams to start the season went 2-0. Lost to Joshua Dobbs and the Arizona Cardinals horrifically a couple weeks ago. But then they would bounce back last week to being Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And right now, I just think it's still like a smoke and mirror for them once again. I mean, they're trying to be a team that could win back the NFC East, but also be a top team in the playoffs and have some momentum where they get back to their first NFC championship game since the 1995 season, only yet to be tailed. But I'm going to take the Cowboys in that one. I think they need to exercise some demons right there. I believe their defense is real, but I mean, when you're only doing against the Giants, Jets, and the Patriots right there, I think it's still, I think people are going to see them do it against a tougher team. The stats they're putting up right there. So give me the Cowboys in that game. And also, too, another game that's be interesting tomorrow, too, is going to be the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets game, which is going to be at the Mile High City right there. That's going to be a 4:25 p.m. Eastern start right there. And I mean, one of the biggest headlines going into that game, you saw Nathaniel Hackett, who was fired during the season last year, his only season as head coach, with an abysmal 4-11 record, pairing up with Russell Wilson, who got lured away from the Seattle Seahawks, traded to Denver right there. A lot of people are starting to see the flaws in Russell Wilson, how he's his teammate. Not really much of a popular guy, but I mean, it was just all started back in the owners' meetings in March. Peyton called the Broncos offense last year hard to watch. Hackett called plays for most of the season before eventually giving up the duty. But then in July, also, Peyton said in an interview with USA Today that Hackett had done one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. Among other inflammatory comments directed at Hackett and the Jets, those comments upset some Jets players, including Aaron Rodgers, who's hoping to come back at some point, possibly this season, from his injury. But I mean, name me one of the people's that also upset people were Randall Cobb and Billy Turner. And Hockey admitted those comments bothered him in the immediate aftermath, but he did say that Peyton never called to apologize for those comments, even though Peyton has admitted they were a mistake. Because remember, he did take it to a whole nother level too, where he actually said too when they were covering on Hard Knocks that they're going to be attracting a lot of negative attention, and watch how that was going to turn out. But I want to say this one. I think the Jets need to win. I think this is a very winnable game. I mean, Zach Wilson, a lot of people are pretty much getting ready to slam the door on. Give me the Jets in that one for tomorrow's game. Give me an upside in that one. I mean, Broncos, who finally just picked up their first win of the year last Sunday against the Bears in Soldier Field. We'll see. But yeah. And then I just want to conclude ending this podcast right now, paying tribute to the late Dick Butkus, one of the great middle linebackers of all time, who passed away at the age of 80. Just want to say, of course, I'm 4 years old. I was never around watching him play. But I mean, we look back all the film, but not just film, just who I was off the field as a man, just his integrity, his toughness, his sacrifice, his dedication, his commitment. I love the fact what he did for helping young kids in school, trying to keep the sport drug free. I mean, his mantra was "I play clean," and I think that's one of the biggest things. I mean, he's definitely been a big time actor in Hollywood and Los Angeles. Any Given Sunday was one of my favorite movies where you saw him as one of the opposing coaches. But I think if anything, just how he's just reached out and touched so many generations of people, just very breathtaking to say the least. So that's going to do it for this edition here of Show Blitz of the Steelers versus Ravens Week 5 pregame show. Again, you can follow me on my social media, on my Twitter X content at MountSteelCGR and on Instagram at MountSteelNation. As I leave you, don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, Steelers, here we go. I go.
You know, this has been our story all year, hasn't it been? 60 minutes. It's never going to be pretty. Throw style points out the window, but these guys will fight to the end. And I take my hat off to you, and I congratulate every last one of you.
Thank you for watching the Meta Steel podcast with your host, Charles Prodigy Richey, here on YouTube. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And for all the latest Meta Steel podcast episodes, feel free to download them on Mixcloud, Anchor.fm, and SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts.